development is like the pinnacle of real estate investing. That's probably the case if you're a stylist. For the rest of you, I would recommend that you don't do it, but I'll explain a little bit about it and at least my journey. And so, did you say Nick Tompkins is going to speak?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's coming.
You guys should definitely come for Nick Tompkins. He's the local goat. Commercial development. Tom, I said. Anyway, so yeah, a little bit about me. Loved investing. I'm a little unique in the sense that most real estate developers, in my opinion, generally come from pretty wealthy backgrounds in general. It's an extremely capital intensive industry. Right? It's kind of like the wine industry. You need a lot of capital to make a little bit of money. Now, the numbers that I'll show you today look astronomical. They look really exciting. But the reality is that, just out of curiosity, are there any developers in there? Okay.
Aspiring.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how many people live here? Cool. Okay. The rest of you guys are, where are you from? Okay. Let's do that here. You're local.
I'm half locals, and you said here I raised my hand.
So I was born and raised in SLO. Got the heck out of here to try and figure out like what the world looks like, which I think helps. And then I came back, and so I put myself. So I come from a humble background. My mom was a teacher, a single parent, right? So it was just my mom. We, barely made it, you might say. And then, so I had to figure out how to put myself through college, and was quite a hustler. And this was like before HGTV really knew like what hustling was. Right? This is in 2000, like 2000. And so kind of started finding undervalued properties. I was lucky enough that some of my roommates, dads, and parents had some money. And they were like, who the heck is this kid? Like I was, putting myself through loans initially. But I really wanted to flip, buy a house. And they were like, that's crazy. But I had a good business plan that I put together and made some money. And then I did it a couple more times down in San Diego. I went to San Diego. And then I was like, okay, this is neat. I can make some money doing this, but I wanted to be a hospital CEO. So I was interning for the hospital system locally, and then I went up and did consulting in the Bay Area. But in the meantime, I was kind of flipping and started buying some smaller buildings, you might say, your typical quadplex, things like that. Started applying the Burr method for those of you that know what that means, which is buy, rehab, refinance, some other things. Brand, yeah, there you go. And so those skills apply and scale to an extent. There are definitely some fundamental differences as you go up the scale for sure, which I'll talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an example of a deal. I love showing what. So what I do is I do private equity real estate investments and development, right? So what that means is that it's not my money. I put in, a fair share of my money, but most of the gas in the tank is our financial partners' money. And so I started back when I was 20 years old, and now I have a couple investors, and now I have over 40 plus investors that I work with, and some of them are local, some of them are still from San Diego, some are from the Bay Area, but predominantly they're local, which is pretty cool. So, I like to walk people through deals. This particular deal is just, it's a beautiful story in the sense that I thought I was going to lose my ass, and we didn't, but it sure looked like that for a little while. I've actually got one of those right now that I'm going through, which I don't sleep very well at the moment. But to this day, I've not lost a single dollar of anybody's money, which is great. To this day, I've historically been able to give my investors about a 15% return per year or better. That's kind of the benchmark that I look for, right? So when I'm underwriting a deal, it is a no-go if we can't do it with the investor's money that they all make about 15% per year. And it's a complicated way of looking at it. A lot of developers don't look at it that way. I like to look at things from an IRR basis. That's kind of an MBA roots kind of thing. It's not the best way to pitch to investors because they're like, what the heck are you talking about? But the best way I can describe that is an IRR is an internal rate of return. And the whole point, and why I like IRR so much, is that it allows you to benchmark your investment off of other types of investments. Right? So, I don't know, does anybody know what the average stock, return is over the last 100 years? 8%. Generally, I think it's like 10 plus. Some people say 11. I think it's unfortunately dropping down to like 10%. Right. So in my head, it's like I have no business investing in real estate, or unless I want to diversify my portfolio, unless I can make at least 10%, or I should just put my money in the S&P 500 and not waste any of my time. Right. So you need to probably be returning around 10% or better to be making a break. Unless, of course, you have a lot of stock, and then you need to do other things with it. So, the internal rate of return is a simple way of looking at that, where it's like, if my money was in the stock for 5 years, and I'm making 11% per year, it's not 11% return across the board, right? Because it compounds. And so, an IRR is a beautiful way of looking at real estate because it allows me to tell my investors, like, hey, 15% per year return is telling them, like, okay, I've got a 4% average basis than if I had my money in stock, right? Just a way of looking at it. In reality, a 15% per year return over 5 years is more like doubling your money. And that's what, because they're better salesmen than I am, a lot of private equity guys who will go out and say, here's your return. It's like 2x, 3x, right? I mean, trillion. But in reality, it's probably something like a 15% plus return. So anyway, I probably went way too far that cut into my time, but it's a good example. So that was awesome. Keep going. Okay. So anyways, so what about this building in SLO in 2019? And here are just kind of some fundamentals of it. So the top is kind of its current state. It's an 8,500 square foot building, all office. It had 9 suites in it. It was marketed at $2.1 million, which is about $250 a foot. I like to look at build costs. Like if I can get something under build costs, that's pretty cool. Probably not going to waste money on it. That's the way I look at it. So they're asking around $250 a foot. It probably costs $200 at the time to build that thing per foot. So it's over build costs. What they wanted was an astronomical dollar amount for cap rates. Just out of curiosity, how many people in this room understand cap rates? Cool. Okay, so real quick, cap rates are how institutional developers and investors look at things. A cap rate basically means if I were to buy this thing in all cash, what would my return per year be? So a 6 cap would be a 6% return per year on all cash. It's kind of a way of looking at it. So at the time that the market for that building was around a 6 cap, so people would make around 6% per year, they were asking a 1.6 cap. So you're going to make 1.6% on your money, which is lower than inflation. It's pretty bad. It was built in 1978. It was an incredibly bad condition. And their average rent, $1.95 in SLO at the time. Conservatively get about $1.60 per foot. And so there was opportunity there, but they're still probably asking too much. I cut my teeth in the recession as an investor, so I like to think that at any given time the assets could drop by 20 or 30%. Am I going to lose my derriere or not? Or my investors going to lose their derriere? And so we generally try to buy things undervalued. And so in this case, they wanted 2.1. We put it under contract for 1.46. It's a pretty big discount. We closed on it for 1.26. It's a big discount. So that we internally valued the building at about 1.7 million. We needed to put around $250,000 into it, and we estimated the rents would be about 80. And if we could do all that, and the cap rate was 10%, which is incredible. Here's a look at what the building looked like. That's actually far too nice of a picture of it. It was very bad. These are what the bathrooms look like. The T-bar was like falling down. It was in really bad shape. The parking lot was completed. Unfortunately, this isn't going to really show it, but this sign was basically falling off the building. All the paneling was basically falling off the building. The parking lot was basically a dirt parking lot because the concrete was so dilapidated. So what do we do? So we don't like to hire general contractors. I generally do everything myself. I don't have the time to do that these days. But back then I did. So we ripped that building up. Unfortunately, when you rip up a building, you have to get rid of the tenants, right? And so we got rid of all the two tenants. They were very, the fact that they went through in that building, the things that we did to it is just like unbelievable. And they're like my favorite tenants of all time because they can ask me for anything to. And so I had an accountant and farmers insurance, bless their heart, stayed in the building while we ripped off the roof, the siding, all the decking, the exterior paint, parking lot, signage, all these things, right? And so I was running around that building basically general contracting it myself. I'm not a general contractor, but I have a lot of building experience, which taught me how to manage all those trades. So, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like when we're done. This is when Subway was still kind of in, so it's already kind of outdated. And we used a lot of ink, which is a really cool Brazilian wood, to access the building and did a lot of things. Now, so I had not lost anybody's money to this point. It was pretty slick. So we bought the building in summer of 2019. We kicked out almost all the tenants. We ripped that building up and spent much money. We finished the renovations in winter of 1920. About a month before COVID happened. My plan was that we were going to rent it for fill it with a bunch of tenants. Everything was going to be great. Our loan was a little over $1 million, so I'm going to $1.2 million building, so over 80%, which is a high debt ratio, but I was confident in it because we're buying such a good deal. And income with those two tenants was $3,500 a month. Our expenses were $9,100 a month, which meant that we were losing at a clip of about $5,600 a month. Not necessarily a problem. Everything's okay. Do you have good investors? Is everybody comfortable? We're going to places. The problem is like, oh, yeah. I don't know about you guys, but if you had assets like this, or you were exposed in the market in about March of 2020, the whole world was going to end. It ended up being semi-okay for most people, but in that moment, it looked like the world was going to end. Right? It's over. All my assets are gone. No one's going to bail us out. It's over. Right? So if you quit your job and you're doing stuff like this, it's a problem. And so, what I did was I picked up the phone, called those investors. They invested $500,000 with me, and I said, I have no idea what's going to happen right now, but I promise you, I'm going to do everything in my power to fix this situation. I don't know what that means, but we will figure it out. So, it was not good. So, like, residential mortgages had relief. People don't know this. Commercial buildings had no relief. Right? So, if you had $1 million loan, nobody was okay with a check. PPP loans didn't apply if you didn't have a consistent income, which we did not. We just created this building and we put them all under separate LLCs, so it means nothing to anybody. We started having to inject $20,000 myself and these investors on a consistent clip, when at the same time we probably weren't making any money anywhere else, right? Very scary. How did it turn out? Oh shoot! The best part is this side box. But basically, what I did was I called about 400 businesses myself for about 4 months, and basically told all these people, hey, no one was going into their offices, right? So I said, hey, you want a month-to-month lease? Someone would say yes. Someone would say, you're on a month-to-month lease. Who knows how long it's going to be before you get to go back in that building? Most of them were paying rent for commercial spaces because there was no loan forgiveness, right? So commercial landlords were asking for rents to be paid. So I just said, hey, if you're willing to, I will do a better lease in a better building, and I will not ask you to pay rent until you're able to go back into the space. So if you cancel your lease with your current landlord, close your business, you can move all your stuff into the suite, and I will not charge you $1 until whenever anybody says that we. So it's an incredible opportunity for these people who are having contracts and yet they aren't going in. They're probably getting a lot of money on TP loans in the meantime, right? So it was an arbitrage event for them. And so what we did, after calling about 400 businesses, and oftentimes I would have to track down those business owners' personal numbers because they don't obviously work. So it was a lot of work. And ultimately, San Luis Obispo at the time, all the buildings had a 97% occupancy rate. San Luis Obispo went from a 97% occupancy rate to a 78% occupancy rate. So significant. Just so you know, like in the Great Recession, we didn't wait till like 8 or 9% occupancy drop, right? So this was catastrophic. At the same time, we went from a 20% occupancy rate to 100% occupied, which is a cool success story, and it's part of my work. How did it financially turn out? So this top line is kind of what we thought was going to happen. The bottom line is actually how it's turned out. And so the investors put in 550,000. It was looking like they would make around this is what the investors would make. They'd make around 20,000 per year on that 500,000, so around 4%, 5%, 6%. And then we always plug in an exit value even if we're not going to exit the property. And so if they exited, they'd make about $1 million. So overall, 15% per year return. That's great. And 2x return on their money. Right? So if they invested 550,000, they were going to make a little over $1 million, which is pretty cool. That's what we thought was going to happen. And it got really scary. We fixed it, and ultimately we did really well in the building. So they had to put in a little bit more money because we had those cash calls. And then first year was 25,000 in cash, so a little bit better. Second year was 64,000 in cash, with a $320,000 refinance check. Right? So what's cool is they gave me 560,000. We refinanced the building. I give them most of their money back. But they're still making 40,000, 30,000, 60,000. And if we sold the building today, they'd be able to get another $1 million. So effectively, they gave me $560,000, and if we liquidated everything today, they would probably make almost triple that. So they'd be almost have like. So it's a cool story of how that worked. So here's the thing to know about development and investing with a developer, or somebody who likes to do big investments, right? It's not the same as buying a stock. You're not just buying a stock. If the stock goes down or it goes up, it is what it is. You are investing that money then, and then you're saying, hey, if things get scary, like I'm going to be there. And what I always tell my investors is, generally how we start is we get on the boat and I say, I need you guys to paddle about 30 yards into this lake. I'm going to put the sail up. We'll go. we'll be able to venture, be great. If something happens, right, we row out, put the sails up, we go a little bit, wind completely dies or a storm happens, I need to make sure that the investors are able to row. So then try and figure it out, like, okay, we got to get over here, we got to get to land. Can you guys row with me over here? Because if they can't, if they stop rowing, let's say there's 6 of them. So we say, hey, each of you needs to keep putting in $20,000. It's hard. Most people can't do that. So one of them says, I don't want to do that, right? But the other ones are having to put in $20,000. And all of a sudden, the other ones are like, why are we putting in $20,000? And he's not. I don't want to put in $20,000. All of a sudden, in this case, only 500,000. I'll show you another deal. We have 10 million in. Immediately, all of that money is at risk, right? We could potentially lose everything. And that's how developments and investments collapse. Is that generally it's because the group has either started to kind of combat itself, or that they've just exhausted themselves and they can't make it to shore. And so my job is to make sure that we're looking at it of like, can we make it to shore? And then is everybody going to row? Because if everybody's not going to row, we need to know that right now. And so in this particular case, everybody was going to row, and it was, which was great. Yes, I have some of those right now. You know, it just totally depends. Like when you're first starting in the business, you're just happy to have people's money. That's super sketchy because what you really should be determining is your investor's fitness level, right? How far can they grow? Because it's not just about getting those 10 rows out there. If all heck breaks loose, and all heck is breaking loose right now. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about. If you guys, if you want to be a real estate developer, I'm going to wait a couple years. Okay. All heck is breaking loose right now. And so, everybody has their own situation. I have one investor who's not able to row right now, but they have a very good reason. And so my job is to make sure that the rest of the investors understand that. And in that case, I actually started rowing more for that person, which was not my legal responsibility, but we're just gonna do it. So here is anybody from San Maria? Okay. Anybody you guys from San Maria right now? Yeah. What part? Oregon? Oregon, yeah. Do you know about Richard Training? Okay. So I'm going to be picky about talking about this project because it's not done yet, and I need to be, it's a politically charged project. So I might raise over a slide or two, and then I'll just kind of explain what was on the slides. So Richard's Ranch. So do you know where Union Valley Parkway is?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Union Valley Parkway, Highway 135. Okay. So we own both sides of Union Valley Parkway. It's a cool property. The history here, see what's on this next slide, make sure I'm not going to get myself in trouble. Yeah, I think we can do it. Okay. Yeah. So amazing property. So this property is 44 acres, flat, urban info. It's like one of those properties that you drive past and you're like, what is this thing doing? So I always thought this property was really neat. Walmart owned it. It was going to be Walmart's attempt at getting into San Diego the first time. Obviously, they've got a Walmart that is very successful. But this actually was going to be their original site. They were going to put a huge super center there, way bigger than the one that they ended up doing. And Walmart doesn't play around. They start closely. If they buy this property, it's incredible. And not only did they buy this property, but then they helped put Union Valley Parkway, which is basically this expressway. So it's got a highway on one side of it. It's got an expressway going right through the middle of it, which means traffic counts, which means. So I knew that Walmart owned this thing. They owned it since 2003. I was doing a deal in Texas with Walmart, and so I knew that team pretty well, and I knew that they owned this. And then when COVID happened, I was like, no one knows what the heck is going on, and I don't what's going on. I think that they might let go of this property because they essentially got stuck with it. Okay, so they bought it in 2003. They wanted it to be the original Walmart site. They flubbed, you might say, and got themselves caught. And as a developer, this would be a bankruptcy type situation. Um, they bought this property. It's incredible. Within a 1 mile radius, the average income is $153,000. Just so you understand, in Santa Maria, that it's about $60,000. So it's a very affluent area, which is also good. Location is important in real estate. Um, Santa Maria is going to go through explosive growth. So just for perspective, from 2017 to so most people don't know Santa Maria is actually bigger than Santa Barbara in population. Nobody knows that. So it's already had a lot of growth. In the next 25 years, Santa Maria is estimated to grow by 35,000 people. For perspective, the city of Santa Barbara in the same period is only expected to grow by 7,200 people. So Santa Maria is going to grow a lot. So a lot of opportunity, amazing site, a lot of growth, good dynamics, or demographics. The challenge, and this is what happened to Walmart, is Walmart purchased this property, all C2, meaning commercial, right? Perfect for them. They're going to put a giant Walmart. The challenge is that Orchid does not have any more water. Did you know that? So Orchid doesn't have any more water, but they generally don't. It's not like you're going to run out of water in the tap. It's like a legality water issue. And so, but yet they're building stuff. And everybody's like, I don't understand. If you don't have water, how they're building stuff? It's not like also says, well, Santa Maria has been willing to give water to Orchid, predominantly only for housing. Right? So Santa Maria has water, Orchid doesn't. It's a long story. Orchid could have had water, they didn't. They chose not to. But they ran out of water, and so this site is effectively useless. So Walmart went to develop it. They tried to go get water. They couldn't get water. If it was housing, you could develop it all day long. But because it's commercial, it is dead. That's a problem. So Walmart bashed their head against that wall for 20 years and couldn't solve it. Now, if Walmart tries to do something with their lawyers and their pocketbooks and they can't do it, it's probably a good sign that myself included, nobody in this. Nick Tompkins can't even get this project to work, right? He has a lot more capability than that. And so that tells you there's a problem that needs to be overcome. And you need to be very careful about what you're doing. And so let's see. Also, Walmart was so upset about what happened because they were trying to get water from the county. The county has water. They didn't want to give it to that part of the county. So Walmart is a little spurred about the issue. And so they said, we'll sell this property, but we're not going to allow pretty much anything to happen in this work. So no gas stations, no grocer, no major retailers, so like no Targets, no pharmacy, no medical. Now, I don't know about you guys, but retail in general is really hard to develop. Like Amazon is pretty much killed the retail business. But there's some things you can do. And basically, those are all those things, right? Like, what am I going to do on this retail site? Grocery store. I need a doctor's office. I need a gas station or electrical charging station. And so Walmart was like, none of those things can happen on this site. Actually, for the next 50 years, which is basically. And so I would be an old man about it. And so I think it's under an airport flyover zone, which has its own legality issues. Okay. And so it's got all these problems, and yet it's an incredible site. It's like there's an arbitrage opportunity here, but you have to be able to solve it. And the problem is very complicated. And how do you make money in real estate? You solve problems. And the bigger the problem, probably the more money that's to be made there for good reason. And one of the reasons so some of the numbers on here are astronomical. And I want to explain to people that development is extremely hard. Okay. Developers had this reputation back in the 90s for making a lot of money. We don't make that much money anymore. The dollars are big, but what I'm not going to show you is the risk, the time, and the amount of fees and things like that. And how many of you know well a developer? Okay, so like 5 of you in this room. How many of you know a physician? Come on, just be honest. Everybody that knows a physician, raise your hand. You know a doctor. Okay. There's a reason almost nobody knows developers because they're super rare, and yet if they make so much money, why they're so rare? It's because most of them don't make it. Okay. Um, and so the property was marketed at $9 million. Walmart had spent another $3 million putting those roads and improvements and curbs and lights in it. And yet the site was completely unusable. We purchased the site in the summer of 21. We were under negotiations with Walmart trying to get those deed restrictions resolved. Like, so I got gas taken away. I think it worked on was the grocer component. The site's like worthless. You can't put a grocer on it. And so we were under contract for a really long time. We bought it for 6.2 million cash. I had to raise $8 million cash because we got to do something with this thing, and it takes money to do stuff. Right? And so the project plan was, how do we fix this site, this unusable site? It needs water. How do we get water? Well, we can't get it from the county, but we just water we try. And so we actually worked with the county for about 9 months because my goal was to try to fix this site and keep it. We couldn't resolve the water issues. I was doing all this under contract, so we didn't pay the solution. Eventually, it was like, okay, we can move this site into the city of San Maria. It just happens to be that the whole site touches the border. Okay, that's called an annexation. And the city of Santa Maria has water. Wow. So much risk and complexity and difficulty. Right? So you have to do a general plan amendment, a rezone, an annexation. You have to go through a full CEQA process, which is an environmental impact report, and multiple political thresholds. Multiple political thresholds. So one of the biggest differences that I learned from being someone who likes to invest in real estate and or flip houses or buildings to being a developer is the political thresholds. It's an entirely different arena. The skill set is actually quite different. Projects of this scale, politics are, and so a lot of folks also you really have to know what you're doing. And so the current investor exit is estimated to be about 3 times their money. The project timeline is estimated to be about 5 years. We purchased it in 21, so we think we'll be done in about 26. And we're only getting it to the point of just being cut up and ready to build. Now, in reality, we want to build most of it, but you can't tell investors like how we do a 10-year project. Like, most of them might not even be alive. Like, a lot of folks that have a lot of capital are generally in their 60s and 70s. They're not looking for a 10-year project to see their money. And so, how I structure it is, okay, let's get it to the point that it's fixed, and then we could sell pieces of it if we want to, and maybe we will buy those pieces back from the investment group and do investments, but we'll compartmentalize them. I'll show you guys a little bit about that project. So this is Richard's Ranch. We're very far along in the process now. This is, the full concepts of what it looks like. The north part of it is a kind of a Whole Foods type shopping center, specialty grocer that this part of Santa, you still have those demographics, huge populations, and yet Santa Maria does not have Whole Foods. It doesn't have a single specialty grocer. That's crazy. And so we're trying to bring in a specialty grocer to the area. This would be a gas station and charging area, car wash, fast food pad, bunch of fast food pads, mini storage, 400 apartments, and 100 townhomes. Massive project. 400 apartments is like a Texas size. But they really need it. And we're I pride myself in being a market rate developer, and so the apartments and townhomes are forced. So this is a concept of the clubhouse for the apartments. The apartments would be really nice, kind of look like rice ranch type architecture, but a lot of amenities to try to separate ourselves from some of the other big which makes a really elevated area. So people are happy. So we're talking a gated apartment equivalent, big style pool, Santa Maria barbecues, um, pickleball courts, a lot of really cool things. And so to try to elevate the area, which Orchid is, in my opinion, elevated area of the San Maria Valley, we're trying to fit in. These are the townhome concepts that would be for sale. Nobody is making townhomes right now, which I actually think because they're not the most profitable thing in the world. I'm really proud to be doing townhomes on this project because it's a perfect step in for people to get into housing, and so we're just going to do it and use them to buffer all the neighborhoods that are around the property. So instead of putting 3 or 4 story apartments next to those people's homes, we're doing 2-story townhomes along the perimeter and then doing apartments. So secrets for those. So this project. So we do all these town hall meetings and stuff with the locals. They vehemently did not want low income housing project in the neighborhood, and so I have no opinions about it. I think it's needed. I just knew that in this particular case, it was not going to be something that the locals were going to do. And so this whole project is totally market rate, and so there are no affordability credits or density bonuses used. Um, any questions about that project? I guess we can talk about it. What's your projected outcome? Yeah, so I think that we will be. So we'll have the mini stores, the retail, the apartments, and the townhomes. I think that those will all be hopefully some wood. Um, hopefully those will be ready to go or sell, even though in reality we'll sell most of them in 2020, which would be a year ahead of schedule for those investors. Um, you know, the whole property might be worth around 25 million these days. So it's a pretty good return over, the 6.2 that we purchased it with. But take that into consideration. We've spent millions of dollars in Taiwan through this whole process. I have environmental groups. So the property has like no environmental issues, which is extremely rare for its size. We have environmental groups that are trying to sue us because 63 butterflies have been seen on the site since 2017. 2017, counted every year. So the site has had no more than 9 butterflies seen on it per year since 2017. And we have environmental groups that are trying to stop the project because it's a butterfly. Right? So, okay.
Just wondering, what is the starting prices for the apartments and homes?
Yeah, so it's hard to say. We did. The world has changed so much since so like we did all these estimates when we first bought it, and we're so busy with just trying to get it done that I haven't re-looked at it. But I think our estimates were around 600,000 for townhome, which should be great. Like homes there and get these days, getting into the 780, 900 range. Um, tomorrow we'll probably over a million everybody else. So a couple other so I have no staff, which is very unusual for a development group. Nick actually runs extremely too. And that's because tomorrow the whole world can change. I don't like hiring people. So times that we have to maybe just go dark for years. And so I prefer to not hire staff for that reason. And we hire large groups of consultants for every single project that I do. All those consultants are specific to that type of project. What we're doing. But what that means is it's an awful lot of work. I probably work a little over 50 hours a week on average. So we have a passive industrial distribution center that we're working on. Think kind of like Amazon distribution. So we purchased that land 2023 for 3.6 million. We think that the post entitled value of it is worth about 6.4, which we've since finished, which is great. I'm trying to sell that thing and it's not moving. That's because so the problem, and we'll get a little into this, development, you do all this work for years and you spend a lot of money and you have benchmarks that you have to hit. Right now, it's just, I'll wait until we get to this slide. Basically, this particular project is sold. And then I'm personally having to pay, I think, over $30,000 a month to carry it. It's just sitting there. We have no intended timeline of when that thing's going to get done. This particular project is very cool. It's a fun story. So I have all these investors. I got this investor named Alan, and he's like one of my favorite investors. And he's this guy that is very, very smart, and he has a lot of money. And so people will come to him with these opportunities, and usually they're not really opportunities. But every once in a while, it is a good opportunity, and he's like the type of guy that can kind of figure out the difference. And so a little bit about me, I always told myself I will never invest out of the area. Okay? It's not going to happen. It's because I've just seen too many people get into trouble doing that. And so, foundational rule of mine is I don't do development or invest other places. Alan had this guy come to him with 45 acres of business park zoned property in Orwell, which is pretty close to Chico. And they were going to sell it to him for $75,000 for 50 acres. It's like, is that a good deal? I don't know. So Alan called me because how I established a relationship with him is that he told me he would never invest with me. And I was like, I'm going to get you to invest with me one day. and so our relationship established that people would call these opportunities and he would ask me like if I could look at it and tell him what the value is. And so I'm pretty good at valuing things. And so he came to me and he's like, hey, these guys want to sell me this for $75,000. It's worth more than that. And so after a bit of time, I was like, yeah, I think it's worth a few $100,000. The problem was that so this area kind of looks like west of San Luis Obispo Airport, where they've done like all those PG buildings and big buildings like that, right? And so Orville does not have the industry that San Luis Obispo has, and so they way overzoned these business park zones, so they're effectively worthless. Are they $75,000 worthless? No, they're probably $400,000 worthless. But $400,000 for a 45-acre property is pretty cheap. And so I was like, okay. Alan was like, I'm just gonna buy it. I'm gonna put a sign on it. I'm gonna sell it for like $200,000. And I was like, Alan, if you want, I'd be willing to look at it. He's like, you said you'd never do something out of the area. And I was like, yeah, but I want to do this. So I was like, I think we could do a solar farm on this thing. And so I went through all the due diligence to do a solar farm up in Orville. And I went up there and met with the mayor and some other people. It's like, hey, let's do this solar farm. And they're like, solar farm's cool, but we really need this housing. And so, a little bit of backstory, right? So they had the Paradise Fire and then the North Complex Fire. It was devastating. And over 50,000 families were displaced in those two fires. It's very sad. And although it's been a few years, they're actually still kind of government-run camps for some of those people. Like, it's unbelievable. And so they're like, and on top of that, they're having their own housing issues just like everybody else. And so we really need housing. And I was like, that's really interesting. The mayor's name is Chuck. It's really interesting, Chuck. The problem is that basically the whole property is under flight zone. Because of other properties I have that are under flight zones, I know this is challenging, really, really challenging for residential. And so I told him, I said, look, these are all the problems with trying to do housing on this site. It's not necessarily unsafe, but just from a development standpoint, it's like you have a way to do it. It's like, well, we have the capital, we know how to do it, so sure, we'll do it. But I need you to look me in the eye and let me know that like we're gonna get through the process because the process can be a nightmare. We're gonna have to when you do residential under an airport land use approach zone, it's not like it's unsafe. Like Santa Barbara and LA and stuff have tons of housing under these zones. Um, but if a plane crashes and hits a house and you haven't overrode their airport land use zone, then it's the plane's responsibility and the airport's responsibility from a liability standpoint. But if a local municipality overrides that and says, no, we don't want to put housing here, then all of that legal responsibility is now theirs. It's a big deal. And so the whole council has to be willing to override that liability. And so Chuck was dead serious about it. And then on top of it, it had some wetlands in it. So it was just a nightmare. Like I joke about it's like the worst properties ever. At least from a development standpoint. And so we spent bought it in 21 for 75,000. We we received our approvals in 2023 for 172 residential lots. We're currently working with some home builders. The estimated values are around 3.5 million. So it's a cool story. Talk about the whole entitlement risk business. So doing all of the entitlement work on that is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So although I don't make a deal on it, you're spending a lot of money to do the work. And all of this under the premise that Chuck and the rest of the council were going to override this airport land use zone. Except in the middle of it, Chuck got it. Somebody else got voted in.
Oh no.
Right? So and sometimes politicians like you see this all the time, right? Just because some other politician's pet project means they don't want to do it, regardless of whether it makes sense. That was just a sad project. And so I called the new mayor right away and was just like, hey, here's the history. We're trying to provide housing. You didn't have to do this. And he's like, don't worry, man, we got you. Like, we don't want to do this. It's like, oh, thank God.
Oh, good.
We've had basically a totally unusable site. And then in Butte County, we bought a 55,000 square foot building. We bought it for 2.7 million. We believe the fair market value on it is about 5 million. But it is undergoing some market challenges, which is what I'm going to talk about next. This is a concept of the Schwaegerle. It's a 128,000 square foot distribution building. The clear height, so the height from the floor to the lowest girder in the ceiling is 36 feet, which is unbelievable. You could like punt a football in it.
Where's that?
It's do you know where? Okay, so you know when they shut down Union for a little while,
Yes.
and you people are on Brentmore. So we own all the land on the east side of our, kind of right next to Daniel's Woodland. You know where that is. So 46, East 46,
Yes.
south of the airport. And then we have 115,000 square feet of kind of like Tin City type industrial buildings that we've entitled there. I keep bouncing back. And then, so let's talk a little bit about challenges and then I'll take you in. So, I'm going to talk about the world that existed and then the world that exists now. And this equates to serious pain in the commercial industry for developers or for commercial investments in general, which equates also to a very amazing opportunity for anybody that is not getting subjected to that. So, agency debt, aka conventional debt, was 3 to 4%. We all got really used to that. They would allow you to take a loan to value of 75%. So if you bought $1 million building, they'd also give you a loan up to 750,000. They wanted it 90% occupied. they wanted 100% of the debt they were giving you. You needed to have that value somewhere else, and this is why a lot of developers and investors come for money. Is because that hurdle is like impossible to overcome for people like us, right? And so, in the case of that, if I put debt on that Richards Ranch property, we would have had to have $8 million of assets somewhere that they could underwrite on. That's smart. It's a lot of money. So this is the conventional world. And then what happened was bridge debt got really hot because the Fed lowered their rates so much in 2020, 2021 that you could do conventional debt for 3 to 4%, which is pretty good. But if you wanted to move really quickly, you could get like 7% bridge debt. They would give you an LTV of 80%. They had no occupational requirement, right? So the building would not have to be occupied, and they would give you it for 2 to 5 years. Now, at the same time, yields for construction a year or two ago was about 7%. Meaning, like, if we spent $10 million between the land and construction and all of that, the revenue would be around 7%. So if your debt was 3 to 4% and your yield was 7%, that difference, that was what the developers and the investors made money on. It's not a very big cut, it's very small. We're talking about big dollars, so the dollars can actually work. If you're doing like that distribution building, it's probably $20 million construction. So if the yield was 7%, I'm trying to do math on the fly, so it's very dangerous. Is that 1.4 million? So 1.4 million, and then your debt would be about half of that. So we'd be making around $700,000 a year. The problem is that most people did this. Pretty much everybody in the multifamily housing industry did this super fast to get your debt really quickly, and they were taking that risk on. And because everybody was doing this, and they didn't have their requirements, more people were doing it. So it's kind of like what's happening in the housing market. It got profitable because everybody could get really cheap money, so it got really profitable really quickly. And the underwriting was not nearly as good as this debt. And so these guys were like bowing out. They're like, we don't want to loan on this property. And so everybody was doing this, which would have been fine if everything else was maintained. But then the Fed, to try to cool down inflation, thanks to them giving us way too much money, jumped up interest rates, and now conventional debt is like 6+%, and this bridge debt is like 11%. Okay. So the problem is that a lot of people bought assets with like a 1 to 2 year loan, and which kind of worked at 7%, with the idea that they were probably going to restructure into this debt. But now these loans are coming due. So this is the debt that they're looking at because they probably can't get conventional debt. And this is like what people are talking about. I don't know if you read articles, but these multifamily deals are just going nuts. Huge multifamily deals. These guys that frankly shouldn't be in the industry, but got on YouTube and were able to raise a ton of money and everything looked pretty good. It took a lot of bridge debt. And ultimately, those properties, when they refinance to that 11%, they're not going to have a choice. It totally doesn't work. The returns are only 4 to 5%, and so they're drastically underwater, and that's where they're missing. And so cash calls, which is that whole thing I was talking about investor time to grow. I've heard recently by some experts that they think cash calls are more prevalent today than they were even in a Great Recession. That's mostly just because things were so bad in the Great Recession, people just close shop. Worse is right now, people are trying to save these assets, but cash calls in the syndication left and right everywhere. One of my partners, who's a developer, but they invest in other places, they had $1 million cash call to them hey, we need $1 million from you to make this asset work. It was awesome. Obviously, he couldn't pay that, and so they had to back out of that investment, so they lost all their equity. These things are happening left and right now. And so we're also seeing it. So like my industrial construction, that distribution center, we spent a lot of money on it. The yield on that is 7%. We built it, 7% yield. The debt on it is 7%. So it's like we can't build it because we would be completely speculating. So if people are willing to do that, then that's how you lose everything. If the Fed raises interest rates more, you're out. If you have triple tenanting it, you're out. It's just an incredibly risky time in commercial real estate. Assets are down 20 to 30% probably. Land is going to be down considerably in the future. And so that is very difficult, obviously, but it's an incredible opportunity for people that have dry capital and then not use it. So that's one of the things that we're working on really hard right now is seeking out those opportunities. And I think that there already is, and there's going to be an incredible amount of opportunity in the future if you have dry capital. So the question is, do you have dry capital? Because everybody's making cash calls right now. It's very challenging. And that's the difficulty of these cycles, right? Is everybody knows that you want to buy with slow. But almost nobody has the capability to buy with slow because they're stuck in it. Right? So I'll end there. And for any questions.
What is like a good capital allocation
For investors. So I'm probably a fool for doing this, but I love developing relationships with new investors, especially younger ones like us. And so my threshold is 100K. So if people have 100K, I'll get it. I've even had made an exception or two where it was an engaged couple, and she put in 40 and he put in 60, and it's like, well, but they're getting married, so it's gonna be 100K. So yeah, 100K, and then that gets very complicated because if you're doing a $10 million deal, like you all of a sudden you have a lot of investors, and part of my job is to engage with them, also let them know what's going on, and if they have questions, answering them. If things are not going well, working through that with them, etc. So more investors is challenging. I'd say that threshold is pretty high. So if you go 100K and you want to get involved with something, then
are you ever swayed to see less investors?
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Generally, we don't talk to them. Right? So it's like, hey, but I've had it, it's very common, at least for me, that I'll have investors say, like, I want to do, say we're looking for $10 million and I'll do $5 million. It's like, how, and maybe I don't know that investor very well. I'll say, how much can you give me an understanding of your work? Right? And it'll come out that they've got like 6 million in cash. You're not taking $5 million, under $6 million. That's crazy. You need to be diversifying that. Um, be comfortable taking that. Most people can take it. Right? And so I have more investors probably because of that. And I think it's behooved us. Like, there have been times where investments look shaky, but I had those same investors in another property. They wouldn't have been invested in if they had invested all of it in that one. And so they're able to say, oh, I know he's good. He's killing it on these other two investors. We're working through this one right now.
Structured investment syndication or LLCs or funds.
Yeah, so I structure everything as LLCs. So all of my investments, I've been doing that forever. We're all separate LLCs. My investor operating agreement is like 70 pages long. I put a lot of restrictions on myself than most syndicators and developers because I don't think they're in the golden rule, right? So, for example, I can't do any debt without my investors on the majority can't sell an asset without my investors approving it. I do a lot of controls on myself that I just believe should be there, right? Like, because a lot of investors say, "How do I know that you're not going to take all my money?" Well, let me explain to you how it's historically done. And these are all the protections that we put in place so that at the end of the day, if I was a bad person or had bad intentions, like I can't do these things, and this is the typical way that these guys have done it.
So if you sell in these LOCs, do you all exchange into something else? You just take the capital gains hit and walk away.
It's totally up to the investors. So there's a threshold that make this up. It's around 65%. If 65% of the group from a capital basis is willing to exchange, then you can exchange. I believe if you are not an accountant, so check with your accountant about this kind of stuff. But if it dips below that, then we can't 1031 even if we want to. Meaning, like if more than 65% of the investors did want a 1031 exchange into another property, then the whole thing falls apart. We can't 1031, from what I understand. But I've been lucky in the sense that my investment group, we've had success, and so pretty much predominantly every investment that we've closed out, we've 1031 gained and added more capital and done bigger profits. So to answer your question, I would give them the option. Like, hey, this project's done. This was our commitment. Here's your money. You do what you want with it. By the way, I got this other cool opportunity. Then they 5% time.
Yeah, it's always been thrown at me that everybody has to roll into the 1031 exchange.
Well,
2 or 3 people can't opt out.
a lot of syndicators will contractually put that. So like they don't want that to be the case, right? They want to be able to just constantly move that money on to another project.
Right.
But I think from a tax perspective, as long as the vast majority of the group, I can't remember what the percentage is, as long as the vast majority of the group maintains, then you can tell everyone.
And the other ones can.
Legally. Yeah. And I mean, if you have enough investors in a private, somebody is going to have a situation that they're going to want to buy a house for a kid, or it's no, that's the females in here, but it's almost predominantly the wife of the investor that's like, I got plans to do something cool. So,
Where are you looking for capital now?
always, there's always a need for capital. Yeah, I have so many needs for capital. Whether that be like building on a successful project where we have the need for capital inject, like things are just so good. Like, and bridge debt at 7% is just as bad as hard money is these days. And I'd much rather bring an investor and like share a little upside and develop that relationship than take 11% debt.
And that LTV is scary too.
Yes.
You got 50%.
Yes. Yeah. Like I mean, the Orville building that we have that we bought at a really good deal, I want to get completely debted out. So like we want to we have like a little over $1 million, 1.38 in debt, and we want to just replace that with equity because the banks are just so difficult right now that I'd rather just deal with investors and then refinance it eventually when it's ready. So they're super predatory. Like our bridge debt, we had an option in the contract. Okay, a 2-year contract with debt. We had an option in the contract, 7% bridge debt. So we got an amazing bridge debt price. And I was savvy enough to say, hey, I want an option to be able to do another 2 years at this interest rate, which we gave up some things to have. Right, if I'm just going to give that for you. I think we took a higher interest rate for that option. There was like, a 50-page legal document. There was a sentence that said like, for optionality, lender has discretion over extreme economic risks. And so I called them 6 months ahead of time. Debt was going to end in June. I called them and just said, hey, I just want to let you know we're going to be optioning our bridge loan. What do you need from me? And he was like, it's too soon. Contract says you need to notify us within 90 days. Wait for the 90 days to notify us.
That's never good.
95 days out. Before this is wild. 95 days out before we executed that option, they sent a legal agreement to us saying canceling your optionality. You no longer have a viable option after. Okay, so it was 90 days out. In today's world, good luck getting conventional tenant. Option will take you at least 120 days. And the asset could be performing perfectly, which this one isn't. And so, in that particular case, there was also no way that I was going to be able to replace that tenant in time. So then I would have been the default. And so, luckily I know some very good attorneys, and we, went all the way to Sacramento to meet with them, and I basically said, look, like, I'm the person you're going to be dealing with. If we can resolve this, and if we can't resolve this, this is the person that's going to be dealing with you. We need to resolve this, like, what you're doing is extremely predatory and unethical. And I said, we've never missed a payment, we've had no late in it. Like, I know what you're doing, and they offered us 11% with a $60,000 option fees extension. Yeah, yeah. And so our payments were going to go from a pretty reasonable 7,000 a month to like 14,000 a month. So, anyways, that's an example where I was like, forget this lender. So we forced them into extending 6 months, but then because of the looseness of that language, instead of getting our 2-year extension, we got a 6-month extension. And they basically were like, we'll see you in 6 months. All right, then you'll be coming back to us. So I will be replacing that definitely. And I'll be giving those investors a good time to do that. Sorry,
Is all this debt personal guaranteed by you guys?
personal guaranteed by me.
By you?
Yeah.
That's why he doesn't sleep good.
Yeah.
Development is very good. And at any given time, every single project has things that look like so, whether it's wetlands that you're dealing with,
I
butterflies.
was going to say the butterfly situation. How are you dealing with it?
I mean,
Because I've been threatened to be sued under CEQA before.
yeah, that's
It's the same thing.
yes.
It's not fun.
No,
And you're liable for all of their costs too.
yes.
It's a joke.
Yes. In our case, it's so defensible. What they'll do is they'll delay us and bleed us out a little bit. But that's just part of the budget, and unfortunately, that's part of doing
Those letters are scary.
which makes housing more expensive. If we did that project in 3 years, the houses would have been considerably less than what they're going to be in 5 years. And that is that plus Title 19. Don't tell anybody who said this. Those two things are basically the variance between our housing and Texas. They can do projects in 2 years. We take 5 years and have to find a bunch of legal battles that stuff that doesn't even exist.
Do you run into your investor 24 guarantee?
Like where they're asking for a guarantee from me.
Just security for investment. Just
Well, as long as I'm not doing something fraudulent, they can't sue me. My job is to do everything in my part of it and to run this well. And so as long as I'm doing that, they definitely shouldn't sue me and can't be sued, but they definitely shouldn't sue me, right? And so now if I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing, like there's been some local developers that have done all kinds of crazy stuff, like they built something and those same construction crews kind of built their own house at the same time. That's fraudulent. Or the funds didn't get appropriated correctly. But if you're doing everything in your power and the market's completely shift on you and things like that, that's just part of the deal. And that's part of the risk profile and why the returns have to be. We just want to do the projects. But no, there's no personal guarantee. One of the reasons I like real estate investing in general, especially if you buy the asset at a good price, is that there's foundationally the value, right? So I tell people, like, when we buy these lots for $3 million, but we know that they're $5 million, Like that's the whole goal is that hey, here's the upside. We're going to do everything we can to get those $5 million. But at the end of the day, if we need to get out of this thing, we can probably get out of it for $3 million. Like very few developers have the time and energy to do that, to look at that many deals to get that variance. And so most investment companies, they're fee based, like I'm not fee based. So the only way I get paid is if my investors make the returns that they promised, then I get paid. So like I could work 5 years and not get that. Right? But a lot of investment groups are fee based. That's predominantly how they make their money. And so to make their fees, they need as many projects as they can get, and they need to do those projects on a rotating basis because they need entry and exit, big entry and exit fees. And in those cases, their incentives are not aligned with your incentives. And so I forget what I was going with this, but basically, like,
You work ethically and you work rigorous.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and the downside should be the hope is if it's structured really well in an arbitrage environment, then the downside is simply returning the money to them and without loss. Which I mean, it's so funny because people invest. It's because they invest in so few real estate transactions that in their mind it's like it's got to make money. But like, I don't know about you guys, but I have over 30+ stocks, right? And I don't blink an eye if 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of those stocks lose money. It's just part of the deal. And that's why it's important to diversify. But when it's a big project and you have millions of dollars in it, then all of a sudden they don't look at it that way. And that's why it's important that they diversify. So in my particular case, I've yet to lose $1, which is great. We've got a project that we'll probably gonna look to exit for no profit for the first time, and that's because I still think we could definitely make a profit on it, but it would be irresponsible. My job at the end of the day is to maximize my investors' return. So if I can shut a project down, making a little bit of money on it, give those investors their money back, and they can go put it in a stock and make 10%, and that's my job is to shut that down. Right? And so if one isn't looking like it's going to make 15+%, then it's like, how do we get out of this and get these people so that they can optimize it, or we can go with something else and do another project.
what's your average money.
It just totally depends. I don't like selling stuff. So, my average is going up constantly. The problem with flipping, it's basically impossible to make money flipping these days. The problem with flipping is that you're always in the risk window. And so, like, you flip, you make money, you buy another house, then you're spending money. So you're always in the risk window. You're constantly subjected to a market. That's a huge problem. And you do that long enough, you will lose a lot of money if you're invested fully in it. Right? So what I'm hyper focused on is risk windows. Like, in that particular building's case in San Luis Obispo, our risk window was the renovation and getting it re-tenanted. I hit COVID in that risk window. Like why I work so hard is to move everything as fast as possible to get that risk window down as tight as possible. Once a building's established and you have long-term financing on it, then you're not in the risk window anymore. You've hopefully given some of that capital back to your investors, and then everything is just green on top, right? And then you relax a little bit. So,
You mentioned your MBA. Do you feel like that was pivotal to go from flipping houses to these complicated entitlements, or what was your
was it
experience?
worth it?
Yeah.
Um, my MBA cost like $250,000. I personally think it was worth it for me. My finance, like everything that I do, I look at financially. Everything is a financial model. Everybody does it differently. Some people look at just like they like the you know the tactile part of the job, or they like the design part of the job. To me, like it's all about the finances. It's probably my most likely. And my MBA was like really critical at that because like just like that's the focus, right? So cash flow, errors, risk analysis, all of that stuff. Like, every single morning, I like spend about 45 minutes looking at where interest rates are going and things like that. It's just such a big part of this job. Yeah.
Are they just looking for like well, like what's like the kind of see what they ask of you the most? So,
Yeah, they want extremely safe assets right now. So the complexity is that it their mentality is not entirely based on risk. They actually have so the Fed has highly restricted the amount of capital that they have access to in addition to the rate that they're getting. So there's just not as much money in the system. And so their ability to make loans, even if they like the asset, is highly restricted compared to what it used to be. Just totally different than house loans. Like you want a house, you qualify, you get the loan. Commercial real estate is so different. And so they have very little extra cash on the books that they can loan. And so it's more like, are you friends with them? Have you done a ton of business with them? Is it a really good asset? Maybe they'll give you the front. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a savage, and so I had loans with some of the local banks, and I really didn't like the interest rates that they offered. I was just like, this is garbage. Like I can go get a life insurance loan for point and a half less. Like I gotta optimize that for my investors, and so I dropped some of the local banks off some of our assets. And right now, that was strategically the wrong move because right now, some of my partners who kept those banking relationships are able to get loans that I can't get because I was so scrupulous as far as like, interest rates goes. So I learned that, and moving forward, like point spread for local banks quite worth it.
That's gonna be my question is like, what's your favorite in town or like, favorite bank or credit unions or fruits and things like that?
Yeah, so I typically like to use from my MBA. I have a contact of the bank. They do like multi-billion-dollar skyscraper brokerages, and they're like the financial brokers kind of in San Francisco. And I know that guy really well, and so I probably have a little bit more exposure to the type of life insurance rates and things like that I can get. And so knowing that, I was like, why would I take 4.5% when I can get 3%? I'm going to take 3.5% when I get 2.5%, which is a natural way of looking at things. But unfortunately, like that's not popular. If you're a local developer, you're not using local banks. I would say I love the guys at American Riviera mostly because they're more willing to be creative. Um, they'll charge a higher percent, but they're more willing to get in there. Again, how you make money is with arbitrage, right? So complicated deals, properties that don't have water, buildings that don't look so good. It's hard to get these, more established banks to loan at the time with a 35-year-old kid that just left his job that wants to rev up a building. Whereas American River was like, let's go. We're going to charge you like 7%, but like, we'll do it. So, fan of them.
I have a question. You mentioned something about multifamily kind of imploding because of the way the loan structures are now when they develop them. So are you going to be a multifamily shopper? The time comes.
Yeah, I think multifamily is very interesting. Unfortunately, I have mostly learned my lesson again in that I don't really want to go out of the area. And it's mostly just because of like the San Luis building, right? When COVID happened, it was like all hands on deck. Um, I was able to do that. And what I've learned is that if I have to be all hands on deck when a property is not local, that is really hard. Like I'm not married, I don't have kids, but hopefully one day I will. And going up to Chico and knocking on 400 doors, like I just don't know if that's in my future. So where I'm going with this is that predominantly the really incredible multifamily opportunities are going to be big multifamily buildings, mostly not in this area. With that said, there are some segments of multifamily locally that I think are real opportunities, and I'll leave it there. You know, this would be.
I already own multifamily, so we're good. That's
I
what I
do
asked.
think, yeah, I think it's a good sector.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I do want to mention tomorrow night in Pastor Wilson, Keller Williams' office, Eric Smith will be speaking about investing with your IRA funds and 401ks, self-directed areas. So if you have one of those, you want to go to that to learn how to do it.
If you guys haven't gotten on the Facebook community yet, I highly encourage you to check in there and post deals there, ask questions there. I ask for contractor help and things like that. I get some good recommendations. So it's really a growing community. I think we're at, what, 300 plus people right now?
300 something, yeah.
And it's awesome. So just engage in the community of the SLO Real Estate Investor Meetup. Also, Ben launched a podcast. We launched a podcast. So check us out. We're always sharing and learning new things that we are picking up on those podcast platforms. So you can find us on YouTube or any streaming platform. And we might email that out in one of the email blasts too, just so you can listen to our podcast, like, subscribe, and leave a review.
And then anyone have any deals they're like working on right now, or need capital on, or need a lender, or like anything? Yeah, what do you got?
I just closed on it's use.
Nice.
Awesome.
Where's that one? Congratulations. Nice.
Perfect. We can definitely put in touch with some people. And then, like American Review is really good. Saslock does some good loans too. Anyone else got some projects they're working on?
Not local, I just live on a, offer accepted on a place in Tennessee, Knoxville.
Is that going to be short-term rental, or is that one that's like mixed use with like?
We're gonna do, student housing,
That's nice. Near college.
University of Tennessee.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah.
So, established a farm, not a specialist in that area, but if you guys know anyone, or know someone that's interested, we can work together on it. It's about 3 acres.
Good ranchers out there.
It's a 2 acre or 2 parcels, 66 acres. It's got 3 homes on it. You could split it into 4, and that's how big of a ranch is.
What's the price of them? 1,500 or 66 acres. Awesome. Let's see. We just finished the flip. Got another contract before we hit the market, and now we're in escrow on another flip that we're buying. So I feel you. It's like you want to minimize risk. At the same time, I got back into flipping recently, just because I was doing a lot of multifamily buy and hold and burst strategies. So, but I feel like it's a good way to build cash while you're doing other things, and then you kind of reinvest that into buy and hold to reduce your taxes, which is really well for us. With all the cost segregation studies and stuff like that. So if you do own multifamily or commercial, do you guys do a lot of cost segs?
Yeah, we always cost save.
Yeah, so like massive savings on cost segregation studies. If you need like a segregation specialist, we have a few that we work with. I think you've done a few too. So, but yeah, if you got any questions, put it in the Facebook group. Go to anything tomorrow. We'll probably grab dinner afterwards. That work and some good together. Thank you guys.
What a great presentation. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.